Namaste. Welcome to this Ask Me Anything session. So it's a new thing relatively new thing we're doing monthly, where if you have a question or a comment, you can leave it under this video. And then at the end of February or as early into March as I can manage, I will go through these comments and questions and answer the best I can. So it's proving quite fun to do and interesting questions coming up. So let's get started with what we've got to go through for this session. So the first comment is from Mystical Light Goddess. And they say, please explain how doing this video while you are sick with a cold is honoring and nurturing yourself. It seems to me you should have used your energy for healing. So this is referring to the last one that I did where I was just coming out of quite a bad cold over the Christmas period. And so if we think about things in terms of limited resources, then this comment makes sense. Do I either do this video or the previous one or use my energy for healing? But they're not necessarily two different things. There is infinite energy, infinite abundance in terms of all things. And there is a point where if the body is sick, my experience has been that there's a point where it's not helpful at all to do any teaching or answer any questions like this, because as I'm doing this, there's a lot of life force energy flowing through the body, more than there usually would be. And it begins to build up as heat and all kinds of things during that session. There's a time when the idea behind the illness, the sickness, the cold in this case, has not been fully transcended, seen. So forcing more life force energy through the body at that point would be very counterproductive. Like trying to turn on the tap faster, allowing more water to flow through a hose pipe that's got some kind of blockage or restriction in it. It wouldn't really be of use. But there's a point then when that restriction has been eased enough that actually turning on the hose pipe faster, the tap faster, is the easiest way to clear the blockage. And I never, as some of the replies to this question here, some people have replied, I never do anything unless it feels right for me to do so. And that doesn't always correspond with what we would logically think is correct. Quite often it's counterintuitive in that way. So I hope that helps to explain that one. It was actually the way that I helped to shift the end of that cold and actually move back into my usual fullness of energy and abundance. So Gu Lee says, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. So helpful, so sweet. Thank you for answering our questions. Happy New Year. Love you, Helen. I love you too. Thank you very much. And Happy New Year to you. We're a little way into it now, but it's going fast enough. Bjorn says Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. And also to Una O'Reilly, who says Happy New Year, Helen. Thanks for everything you do. Thank you. Thank you. Susan Tockman says, thank you so much for all your teachings. Happy New Year. Thank you. Thank you. Same to you too. Will Strachan says, this is in regards to a question that was sent in December about near-death experiences. He says, I've heard quite a few NDE accounts, and I've often wondered that recognition of not being the body, as Helen points out, is not something that is especially highlighted as a definite feature. So that much would be obvious in a near-death experience, some kind of recognition in that moment that I am not the body. If I find myself suddenly out of the body and the body's just there, whether it's injured or whatever is happening, it will be obvious in that moment that I am not the body. But whether that's a permanent recognition or not is often in question. And also then what I am still might not have been clearly seen. I might still think of myself as a someone. So again, it's not something I've personally experienced I've only been close to death once, and it wasn't really, I didn't have the same kind of experience, let's just say, as people describe in those near-death experiences. Nishi says, Happy New Year. Thank you. Same to you. Deborah Tickner, wonderfully clear answers. Thanks, Helen. And questions sent. Thank you. Any teaching is always a combination of the questions asked and the answers. There's no such thing as just a teacher on their own. So your questions, your comments, your feedback, and your sharing help me to allow original answers to come, and the two interlock completely. It's never just the teaching on its own. There's no such thing as a teacher or a student independent of each other, which is why it just works so beautifully well when we get together in this way. Okay, One Love Henry 1 says, thank you for trying to give clear explanations and shortcut practices to awakening. I'm challenging the beliefs I've been living out until now in most every area: relationships, feelings, authenticity. Even though I understand I'm the source of all things, I still need to experience this more deeply. I still get hung up around money and finances. I'm so sick of the limiting beliefs I hold onto around money and the lack of it. Finding a job that pays what I'm worth, not wasting energy worrying about spending and paying the bills. I want to live in peace in all aspects of life and living. How can I see money and finances as the abundance that I am? How can I know that I'm worthy and safe? I really feel a resonance with this, because this was my major karmic pattern, where it played out, any sort of unworthiness played out in terms of my some relationships, but really my finances or lack thereof. I was good at manifesting an abundance of lack, and I wanted to turn it to an abundance of abundance. So let me just say that, start by saying, of course you want to experience it and live it deeper. Of course you do. And there are only a couple of things that really worked permanently for me in terms of transcending this. One was contemplating what the lack of money is showing you. So how does it seem to make you feel? So if you don't have enough money, or you overspend what you do have, or you make a purchase on something that you really shouldn't have, or something like that, you sabotage yourself somehow financially, or there's just not enough seemingly coming in. What emotion does that bring up? Because mine says, I feel this way because of the situation with the finances, my money. When my money is abundantly coming and flowing and I don't even have to think about it anymore, I'll feel this way inside. And for me, I was using my finances as a measure of how worthy I was, as you've pointed to here. So if you had more than enough in the bank right now, how would you feel? And if you had so much money coming in, not necessarily a large amount each month, let's say, but more than enough, with a knowing that more than enough is all you can experience for the rest of eternity, how would you feel? Would you feel more worthy, more accomplished, more complete, more awakened? And looking at those things, how can you turn that around? So we're saying, when my experience out there changes, I'll feel differently inside. And that's how it really seems for all of us. I had to really look at this. Actually, until I feel the way I want to feel inside, my outer experience is not going to change, because my outer experience is a mirror image, a reflection of, if I'm everywhere, then I'm not just here feeling this way. And we've talked about it before in terms of cause and effect. Mine says, I feel this way. That's the effect. And the cause is what's happening in my experience, my finances in this situation. But really, it's the other way around. The cause is my not feeling how I want to feel based on some belief I'm still holding on to. And here you've already mentioned unworthiness, safety. And the effect is the experience I'm having. My bank account is the effect. So I must really come to question if it's really true that I'm not good enough, not worthy, or not safe. And on my this YouTube channel, there is a playlist called The Core Teachings, and there's a video there on contemplation. I suggest watching that if you haven't already seen it. Looking at how getting the experience you want would seem to make you feel, and then questioning why you can't feel that way right now. It's never, ever, ever going to work that the experience changes first before your feeling, your state changes here. Always the other way around. And also, I suggest looking at lack. You know, if the universe is infinite, if you are infinite, then, and everywhere, can you actually experience lack? And I kind of hinted at this before. I was good at experiencing an infinite abundance of lack. My abundance kept showing up as not enough. There was plenty and plenty of times when there was not enough. And we experience this because we believe it's possible. If you are really infinite and not actually a human being, why should you run out of anything or experience not enoughness in any way at all? If you've really spent some time looking at this, questioning this, can I really experience lack, or have I just been creating the experience of lack? And spend some real time with that. You know, can the infinite being that you are, that's creating this entire cosmos, experience lack? Can it run out of anything? By the very definition, infinite means infinite supply. Constantly bringing forth into abundance. And when manifestation appears, even as money, it cannot do halfway. It always turns up 100%. Whatever unmanifest turns into manifest, becomes visible and tangible. It's always 100%. There's no diminishment in that process. The only thing that makes us experience otherwise is this belief, the idea where it hangs on that we're a separate being, separate to what we want or need. If you're not separate to that money at all, how can you experience lack? And this leads me to the last point to really nail this that I had to look at. Is there really such a thing as me? I'd looked at that anyway, but money, what is money? And I went through the layers of this. Well, it's a piece of plastic that I put into a machine. And then it's paper that comes out of the machine, and metal coins, and it's digits on my phone, my banking app on my phone. It's numbers on a screen. And I kept looking at what really is it? What really, really is money? Is it paper? Is it metal? Or is it something else? Staying with that question until you come back to the absolute nothingness, formlessness, insubstantiality of money. If we think it's a solid thing, which of course we all do, it's a real actual thing. You know, if I, here in England, I don't know where you are, but we have a, £10 note, £5 note. If I put a £10 note in your hand, said, that's money. Well, is it really? It's actually a piece of paper with ink on it and writing. Or not paper these days, it's some kind of different stuff, but you get the point. And then if we look at what that actually is, we come down to a bunch of atoms, molecules. And then if we look at what those are, we'd find some subatomic particles if we keep going small enough, under a powerful enough microscope. And eventually we would come down to the nothingness, the emptiness that everything is. So where does money exist then? Is it out there, or is it in here? And what happens when you let go of that label? Whichever, you might have done the contemplating already, and if you haven't, then that's where I'd start. I'd go with all those 3 points. It took a complete understanding that firstly, there is no lack. I'm not a separate being. I'm not separate to anything, including money. It is also another way I'm showing up money. I'm showing up as this body, these words, this room, money, and that it isn't really a real thing in the way that we think. The word currency indicates that it really is pointing to a current, a flowing, a vibration. Really, money is an energy, a vibration. So spend a bit of time on that, because it's a lot of people's questions. It certainly plagued my entire existence. As long as I can remember, up until awakening, there was just constant fear of not enough. So hope that helps. And, you know, and if you want to share what happens when you investigate that, then do get back to me. Sarah Pitchford says, ooh, I loved every question here and soaking up your answers and responses. Thank you, Helen, always more pure gold. Thank you, Sarah. Much love to you. Pamela Rawlinson says, Happy New Year, Helen. Thank you so much for all your videos and satsangs, which I've soaked up over the last 12 months. I always enjoy hearing this message, and your unique delivery has penetrated my current understanding. Current, again, there's that word. Infusing it with love, peace, and stillness, exactly when I needed it as challenges appear. Thank you so much, Pamela. I really appreciate that. And again, without all of your intelligent questions and feedback, there's nothing. The questions and the feedback stimulate the response in the teacher and the teaching. So it works beautifully together, doesn't it? It makes this tapestry of teaching that gets woven together with everyone involved. You know, it's not just me sitting here talking to you. It's everyone that's ever asked a question of any teacher everywhere, ever, or thought, or wanted a question, or shared something. And that's a beautiful thing. Chris Hayes says, hello, Helen, much gratitude for the wisdom and love you share. My question, when beliefs appear, how do we release them? It seems that beliefs come up while meditating or an inquiry, and I see they are false. I think I have let them go. The belief then seems to appear again and again. Well, you are describing there my entire awakening. And in short, really, I would say the only way to fully know that you have transcended a belief, as I was saying with the previous question about money, contemplation, I would absolutely suggest that you go to the Core Teachings playlist. One of those here on YouTube on my channel. One of those is contemplation. And when you see the belief, it starts with an I, and it usually something like, I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, I can't get what I want, I'm blocked. Whichever way that is appearing. And then you turn that into a question, because you can't just stop believing a thought. So much attention has gone to that thought. A belief is just a thought. Over the years of our existence in this physical body and previous ones, so much attention has gone to it that it's given the specialness, that idea. And you can't just, theoretically, we can say, right, I'm just going to stop giving that attention. I know it's not true. But the way to unbelieve a thought is to, when that comes up, I know that's not a real word, unbelief, but just for the sake of explanation, when that idea comes up again, you turn that into a question. Is that true, actually? Is it really true? I'm not safe, not good enough. Is it really true? I can't get what I want. Given what I'm seeing myself to be in my satsang, in my inquiry, can it really be true? Like we're challenging this idea of lack in the previous question. Can I really experience lack as the infinite self? And whatever the belief is that's coming up for you. And when I was doing this, as I was explaining earlier, I began to see that my experience was always going to be a reflection of what I'm holding on to in here. So my experience can be used as a guidepost as to how much I believe this idea. So as I begin to question this, and you can just sit with this question, is it really true? You know, fill in the blank with that open curiosity, even though your experience is telling you it's true. Your experience is mirroring what you might know up here, that you're absolutely safe, but the rest of your body, your beingness, is feeling the negative emotion of that belief still. And you can see, you can feel, I'm not convinced of this actually yet, that it's not true. So how to take it down to theoretical, from theoretical to experiential. I would stay with the question, asking it as often as you can, setting aside some time each day, as much as you want to, 10-15 minutes as a minimum if you can. Is it really true? And just watching all the answers that come up, thought answers, emotions, experiences, everything, not judging any of those answers. Mind will say, yes, of course it's true, you're not safe, or you're not good enough. Look at your bank account, see, here's evidence that you're not good enough. You stay with the question anyway, until your experience is turned on its head. So if I'm experiencing not enough of something, which is really all karmic patterns, isn't it? Not enough love, money, respect, approval, whatever it is that we're seeking, more time, not enough time, patience, all of that. I would stay with the question until my experience had turned on its head, more than enough of that particular thing. Only then can we feel that it's completely gone, because we're not living it anymore. So we're looking for an experiential answer to the question, is it really true? I'm not safe. And if you're not sure what the belief is, you can go to the emotion. What does fear tell you? For me, it said, I'm not safe, I'm in danger. Anger was saying, it's not fair, I can't get what I want, I'm blocked. Guilt was saying, I'm not good enough, I've done something wrong, there's something wrong with me, something like that. You can get a taste of that. So I hope that helps. That was the only permanent way I've ever found to release these once and for all. When my experience is showing me the opposite of what prompted me to contemplate in the first place, I have let it go. And then it will continue to improve again and again. Lovely. So Monica says, Monica Sitars, I think. Hello, how to find joy in the present moment. I can find peace, but looking for joy. She's also put another comment to my question. I'd like to be able to find joy in myself, being in a situation I see as neutral. Next question, who is the one that chooses, for example, to let go or follow ego thoughts? Is it the one that is confused, or ego pretending to understand? Thank you so much for your being. Okay, so how to find joy in the present moment. Peace comes first, of course, doesn't it? So peace is evident as the absence of division. So when I'm being myself, when I'm not should or shouldn'ting myself in any way, I'll find a sense of peace there. And then over time, that peace will deepen into joy, into love, into even bliss eventually, and sometimes even some ecstasy, some kind of deep ecstasy. Really is just intense joy, isn't it, in a way, intense bliss. How to deepen that into joy was the same thing happened to me, where I was feeling a lot of peace. The silence was just so loud, ironically, paradoxically, and there was a lot of peace, but there was no love, there was no joy at a certain point. And I realized as I looked at this that it's because I haven't really gone deep enough. I'd let go of, I'd allowed the peace to satisfy me, and of course it does. But really, if we're kind of looking for more, we've got to go further inwards. So maybe you can see, theoretically at least here with me now, that a total absence of fear would result in joy. A total absence of any sort of very self-centered thoughts would result in a sort of permanent state of love. Or we could say that the total absence of any negative emotion would result in bliss. So it's going to be very hard to feel joy if we've still got some remnants of fear. And we all do have for a long time. And it might not be that I'm feeling outright fear anymore. But there are situations in my life that are showing me I still feel not 100% safe. So areas in my life where I'm running out of resources, seemingly, as we've been talking about, that's enough. Even if it's not causing an outright panic or anything, it's enough to diminish the expression of joy. You could say there's really a sliding scale where we put this label joy at one end and this label fear at the other end. And we can kind of see where we are on that. It's really the same thing, like love and hate and separation and peace and joy and fear. And even just the slightest little idea of lack can be enough to unseat this joy. If I know, and my life is, if I really know something, I will be living it. My experience will be telling me. So just looking at which areas of your life aren't functioning, flowing, growing spontaneously, and it's okay, we all have those. And what do I seem to need, and how does that make me feel, as we've been talking about this cause and effect. And when I let go of the limiting beliefs, my body might not be telling me, but my life is still telling me, my experience is still telling me. So we experience a belief in three places. It's all the same, really, but for sake of explanation, we experience it here. We experience it here as a negative emotion, a belief, the negative emotion, and then the experience out there. The three parts or spectrum: mental, emotional, physical, actually living it. And it's not really fully gone until it's no longer being lived as an experience either. And sometimes these just sneakily hold on for a while as our experience, because we're feeling a lot of peace now and quietness and contentment. So it can be a prompt then to go deeper into how to find joy. I'll answer your second question, but from this point, because we're getting more and more questions, I'm going to just answer one question per person per month on here, just purely because of time here. So the second question is, who is the one that chooses, for example, to let go or follow ego thoughts? Is it the one that's confused, or ego pretending to understand? Who's the one that chooses, for example, to let go or follow ego thoughts? Well, if there isn't really a separate sense of self, then the decider, the chooser, is always the self, isn't it? It's always the self appearing as ego. So whether the self is recognizing itself or it's appearing as ego, thinking it's a separate being, it's always the self. There is only the one. The only difference is in how conscious that self is of itself in those particular terms. So I hope that helps to explain that one. So next one, Nishi says, I'd like to know why you have beaded garlands around your wrists all the time. Are you reciting God's name in your heart all the time, or meditating on God's name all the time? Well, embarrassingly, I have to admit that when I first started wearing these, it was very much as a separate being, or thought I was. And to be honest, I just thought they looked cool. I thought they were what spiritual people wore, you know, and it kind of started from there. But it also helped me to kind of feel like this was my spiritual practice time. This was my thing. And then I really just liked the idea of how they felt somehow very reassuring. So it kind of moved to that. I really like sandalwood, and I've got some that were sandalwood, and they just helped me to feel calm. I was dealing with a lot of fear at that point, as I'm sure many of us are. It was coming up in abundance. And then I began to really kind of, not necessarily count, you know, there's a practice where each time you touch a particular bead, you move through them like prayer beads, and you recite God's name or something. It was just when I noticed them, felt them, smelt the sandalwood or whatever, I would try to listen for the silence. when my attention was going more to thoughts and what was happening in the silence, what I was aware of rather than the awareness, whichever way I was tuning into the self, the noumenon, as we've called it too. I would kind of anchor myself a little bit in my practice by, as I feel the beads on my arm, sometimes as I heard the sound they make, just a very slight, I'm emphasizing that, but it just was a trigger for me to go back into the silence. So it worked really, really well in that way. And over the years, because this kind of teaching has just developed over so many years from a very small meeting in a local cafe with friends to what this is now, it's just become part of this satsang. It's become part of what I do, same as my scarves and the beads, and I have a lot of crystals and stuff like that I sometimes wear as well. It's just, I don't know, I don't want to say the word uniform because it makes it sound like a job, but it's just what I like to do when it happens. Other than that, I can't really tell you. It's not really that I'm constantly reciting God's name, because now it's just, there isn't a God and me. There's just the allness, the isness of the self. And identity shifts over. We don't have to kind of do that constant practice anymore. But I started from a very egotistical, selfish place, trying to look cool, trying to do what I thought spiritual people did. So. And it's really whatever helps you to remember, isn't it? To come back to your practice. So Jesu Ravi, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, says, I guess it's pretty late to post this question here, but here goes. What do non-duality teachers mean when they say, I think of Tony Parsons and Richard Sylvester, the separate self is an energetic contraction? This somehow sounds to be true, but it's not particularly helpful in that this contraction either releases spontaneously or not at all. There is nothing we can do, according to these teachers, to assist the process. Well, I don't want to particularly speak about any other teachers because I only like to talk about my own experience, which I can prove within myself. But in terms of what you've said, this idea that there's nothing we can do, we're not the doer, we're just the witnessing. That idea, whilst it's true, it frustrated me endlessly. It left me feeling disempowered, helpless. I was just bound to suffer until I know this separate sense of self isn't true, but it still seems to be here. And what do I do about that? Well, there's nothing you can do. Just abide as the self. And that was just so, at a certain point, bitterly disappointing to me, that kind of recognition. And as a teacher now, I can see that there is a time and a place for that kind of teaching, where someone is so caught up in the idea that they're a separate being. Sometimes we have to kind of shock them out of it by saying, there's nothing you can do. There's no separate being. You can't do anything to get rid of it. So that is true. But for me, it went full circle in that there's nothing that the self can do or needs to do, because this is not true that I'm a separate being. There is no ego, although there seems to be, of course. And it developed into, yes, but that self that's not doing anything is also showing up as a human being that's trying to do a lot of spiritual practice here. So while the idea that I'm a separate being is still playing, trying to do, and you know that sense of someoneness, don't you? Because it's trying to get somewhere with its practice. I'm meditating so that I get to the awakened state, instead of I'm already that. So while there's someone trying to do something seemingly, what can you do with that sense of someone to come out of illusion completely? And this is where the three core teachings came from for me. A combination of meditation, self-inquiry, and contemplation were, there isn't a boat that has 3 oars, you know, it has 2 either side. But if you could somehow have a boat that had 3 oars, I know it's a kind of a weird image, you'd have to row equally with each of these 3 oars to kind of, I meditate on what I already am, self-inquiry shows me what I am deeper, and then what's going to come up out of that is beliefs that are no longer true, never were true. Firstly, the belief that I'm a separate being, separate from everything, and then more specific beliefs that hang on to the separateness. If I'm a separate being, then I'm also not safe, I'm not good enough, and all of that comes after. So we use contemplation for those. So a combination of all those 3, and really they're all the same thing, just the practice approaching them slightly different ways. So yes, it's true that there's nothing you can do, but you're also showing up as a doer temporarily, aren't you? And the doing for me became, what can I see clearer? What can I see clearer to undermine this sense of illusion that's still going on? What can I see to undermine the sense, if I still believe on some level, on my experience is showing me that I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, or I'm just the general idea that I'm a separate being. As I contemplate or self-inquire, I'll see the truth of that again and again and again, until I no longer go back into that habitually, go back into the illusion of it. So there is a stage where, for me, that kind of teaching was helpful, when I had seen that I was formless, that I wasn't a thing, but I still kept recreating out of habit over and over again. I would have a seeing in my self-inquiry, and then 2 minutes later, I was back to, I don't have enough of this, that, and I need to do more practice. And if I was awakened enough, and, you know, all that stuff, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. That kind of teaching can be a slap around the face to the kind of part of us that's caught in the illusion. But then I began to realize deeper that I could see over and over again that there wasn't a separate being in my meditation, in my inquiry. But if I kept recreating it and sustaining it with my karmic patterns, my beliefs, my experiences, I would be keeping it alive that way. I'd be recreating that separate being in every moment. And I had to look at what I could do to do that. So are you the doer? Yes and no, right? Neither of those questions are absolute, those answers rather, because the unmanifest self, the formless awareness, silence, stillness, consciousness, beingness, whatever we're calling it, noumenon, is not doing anything. All this just is. But you're also showing up as a human being. You've taken the shape of a human being that can think and decide and question and challenge. And that's not an accident. That's on purpose. So can you use that? There's a kind of doingness in that, isn't there? The challenging of the beliefs. So I hope that helps you to move beyond. Okay. So contraction energetically, it's a separate self is a contraction, an energetic contraction. For me, the separate sense of self existed in, as I was saying before, in terms of karmic patterns. It was a conglomeration, a collaboration, collection of beliefs, all pinned on this belief that I'm a separate being, and then I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, I can't get what I want, and all of those. And it existed as thoughts here that I often wasn't aware I was even thinking, emotions here, and then tension in the body, tension. And this is the major thing. Another way, apart from our experience turning on its head, as I was saying earlier, a major way of recognizing that you're transcending these beliefs once and for all is that the body will finally relax. All of us have been like this our entire life. I'm exaggerating, of course, but when I first began to see this, I realized my shoulders were like this all the time. I wake up from a night's sleep and I couldn't actually move my shoulders back, and my hips would lock into place, and, you know, my toes would curl because my muscles in my lower legs were just kind of constantly in this fight or flight contraction. And the body is always giving us real-time feedback in that way as to how much we've transcended that energetic contraction. You know, on a very visceral level, a very tangible level, the belief that I am a separate being and I'm not safe. If I'm a separate being, my existence started at some point, it's going to end. And that is so terrifying to us that we suppress the emotion. We feel fear, of course, but not the fullness of it. And it lives in the body as literally our body being a constant state of fight or flight. The red alert button is constantly being pressed. That's my understanding of this energetic contraction. It might not be the other teachers. I haven't heard anything by Richard Sylvester at all. I've only heard a tiny bit of Tony Parsons' work. So again, I don't really want to comment on what they mean because I don't know what they mean when they say it. I don't know their experience. I kind of do in the allness, but I don't know their individual expression. And so therefore, I don't really want to go comment on that too much. But hopefully what I've said helps. Okay, Christina says, thank you again for this opportunity. My question is about love. You say love is acceptance, understanding, wants to know why something is the way it is, wants to understand everything about it, to know the truth. And to be loving to yourself, you should accept how you feel and accept your outer experience. Don't fight it. Well, don't fight it. You can accept this is what's going on, but challenge the belief behind it. So we're not just going, this is what is. I'm sure that's what you mean. I'm just clarifying in case. So I'd look at my experience. Of course, I don't want that experience that's happening. That's not the way I want it to be. The only way out of that is to accept this is showing up because of some idea inside me here. Question, a lot of revelations and really dark stuff surface on social media. How would love handle all that is right now? Look at it or not look? And how to accept this fraud and dark stuff. So there was a point for me where love would, it was more, there isn't an absolute answer here. Is there what would love do with this? That question is different every single time. And the answer is different. So for me, and again, I've only got my own experience to go from, love would, at a certain point, it did the ostrich thing. I don't want to know what's going on because it's going to distract me from my practice, my seeing. And as explained on a previous satsang recently, there was a recognition underneath that the best way to kind of help all that anyway was to continue my own awakening and deepen in that until it was just radiating so clearly, completely, that it began to affect everyone around me. So there was a point where love turned away from that because it was on some kind of inner drive, and love here is the same as the self-awareness. I'm using those words synonymously, beingness, consciousness. And then at a certain point, love began to want to go back to that. First, it wanted to see here what I really, really was. And then it wanted to see that love express itself as my relationships, my finances, my vocation, everything. So it went through a clear seeing again and again and again. And then love turned to my life and wanted to kind of express itself as my life, as an expression of love, which was experienced as having to work through my relationships, look at where I was holding back love for myself and others, and usually because some belief. And then eventually it wanted to look at the world through the same loving recognition of what the world and the dark stuff and all of that really is. So then, like all times, as you said, the impetus was wanting to understand, why do people do the things they do to other people? Why do people do the things they do to the planet, to animals, to whatever. And wanting to understand, wanting to know what the root cause of that is. If you love someone, you want to know everything that you can about them, don't you? You're infatuated with them. You want to understand them completely, even on a cellular level, in terms of, I want to feel like I fully know you. And eventually love will do this with the world. Why is it the way it is? What's that about? Curiosity. So there was a real looking for a long time at all the things that happen. Not literally like spending hours watching the news, but why do human beings harm each other, themselves, the planet, all of that? Why do we cause harm physically, emotionally, mentally, all of that? That was where love wanted to go then. So you can only honor what love wants to do right now as you. If it doesn't want to look, and we make a joke sometimes, the ostrich, with the head in the sand, I can't see it, it doesn't exist. It's not that we're denying what's going on in the world. It's just, is it helpful right now to look at that? And where am I looking at it from? From the egoic sense of self, separate self, or from the self, undivided one? Because if I want to know myself, and I recognize eventually that it's all myself, of course, eventually I'm going to want to look at everything too like that. And a clear understanding of why this is happening then can provide a transformation, a change. And it comes first as our life. Our life changes and transforms, our relationships, all of that. So I can't give you an absolute answer to that. Love might do different things at different times, but I can say, what does it want to do now as you? And you can ask that question, what does love want to do now? And it may be counterproductive or very beneficial to read the newspaper or check out the headlines or watch the TV news. Only you know that, and your feeling will show you that. When you're exposed to that kind of stuff or on social media, what are you feeling as you're, being conscious of what your body, the feedback your body is giving you while you're doing that? And where are you coming from in when you're approaching it? It's key. So hope that helps. You always know best for yourself at all times. There is no external authority that can tell you. And learning to trust your own authority, again, is part of that, isn't it? Also known as love. Authority is just love. Okay, so last but not least, SK says, I have much love, gratitude, and appreciation for all that you're doing, for all of us awakening. My question is, when you receive wisdom, how do you know it's from connecting to the divine and not from the mind? Is connecting even the right word to use, as we're always connected? Thank you so much for your support. So connected is a good word. I mean, it hints at duality. It hints at a me and the self, doesn't it? Connected. But I know what you mean in this context. And even receive, when you receive guidance, you said here. Wisdom, sorry, you said. So receiving and connecting indicate two. But when we know we are the self, when identity is shifted over, then there is no need for mind to filter that. It just comes straight from the silence. So I would suggest, instead of making it an absolute, is it mind or is it self? Again, we can see there's a sliding scale. I might be fully convinced here I'm a separate being, and my wisdom will be coming from the mind. It will be limited, contracted, not wrong, just limited, and based on the false assumption that I'm separate to everything I'm talking about, thinking about. And then at this end of the scale, I am knowing, I know my infinite nature. I know I'm everywhere. I know that there's nothing that's not me. There is only the one self. So everything that my laughter, my jokes, my words, my actions, my everything about me is going to be coming directly out of the silence, the stillness, the self. And anytime we're, depending on how much our identity is shifted over, we're at some point on this scale. So really, it's helpful really to say, am I expressing that as the self more today than I was yesterday, not making it quite so absolute, because I've done this here, but really this is endless. It's still deepening for me. My identity is still deepening even now, and always will while this body's here. And then if there's another body afterwards, it'll continue. There's no, just like there wasn't an arbitrary point where you started here in this lifetime. You've really been working on this for many lifetimes, and it's just speeding right up now here. So it's a useful kind of teaching tool, indicating this sliding scale, but it's not fully reality. In a very simple guide, I would really look at how you feel when you express, when you receive some insight, some thoughts, some wisdom. How does it make you feel? Again, your body is there for a reason. It's there to give you real-time feedback. So if I receive some wisdom that I'm not good enough, my body inherently tells me that's false. It's from the mind, because it feels a very low vibration. That low vibration we might call guilt, shame, unworthiness. If I receive some insight, some wisdom that I am infinite and formless, my body will also tell me that that's very, very true. It might feel light, blissful, peaceful, quiet, content, open, light, free. And that's the real in the moment test for me. How does my body respond to this wisdom? And again, just letting go of an absoluteness about one or the other. There isn't really a dividing line in the middle, like mind would like to think. Mind works in duality. Mind says it's either coming from the self or the mind. And it really imagines some kind of middle arbitrary point where finally all my wisdom comes from the self. But really, it's just kind of continuously doing this, isn't it? More and more each day. Ultimately, there is no mind or separate sense of self. Mind is just all the thoughts that come, or egoic mind, as we're talking about here. Contracted mind, we could say. It's really just all the thoughts that hang on to this one idea that I am a separate being. Well, all the rest of it is hanging on that one idea. So when we see we're not a separate being, all this kind of lower wisdom knowledge is lower only in vibration, not wrong again. It is really just coming from this idea that I'm a separate being, and we no longer have access to that. I can't these days actually even think in those terms now, which is lovely, obviously, but when I thought I was a separate being, I couldn't think in terms of being an infinite being, the infinite being. So you lose access to these resources of being a separate being more and more as your identity shifts, and that's okay, isn't it? That's the whole point. But always remembering, if there is no separate self, then it's all coming from the self. If there never was an entity called me or someone, as an individual expression of the oneness here called Helen, and you know, your name, whatever your name is, it's just SK here, obviously, but that is still the self. It's always the self expressing itself. The only real difference then is what frequency, vibration is that wisdom expressing itself. And the closer to the absolute truth that wisdom is, the better my body will feel. The further away from that absolute truth, the worse my body will feel, the more contracted, tight, tense, negative emotion, maybe even physical pain, and all of that in the end. So I hope that helps to kind of give you something to work with there. So some very, very intelligent questions and sharing there. Thank you very much for your insights and questions and for helping me weave this tapestry together. So as I said before, if you do have a question that you'd like answered, I'm just going to answer one question per person per month here, just in terms of looking after my own time management, which I've not always been very good at, just stick it as a comment under the video here and I'll do my best to address it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it's been useful and I look forward to next time. Namaste.